Welcome to this edition of the Sacred Hoops podcast. My name is Lee Palmer of Sacred Hoops. Today we are joined by Augie Great, Cody Schilling. Cody, thanks for joining us today here on this podcast.
Yeah, Lee, good morning. Thanks for having me.
First of all, why don't you give a brief synopsis for people that don't really know who you are, where you came from. I just mentioned that you played at Augie. You also were the head boys basketball coach at Mount Marty. Kind of touch on your background for everybody that might not know who you are.
Yeah, so I grew up in Ellsworth, Minnesota, which is about an hour outside of Sioux Falls. Was a high school basketball player there. Had a chance to have a really successful, nice high school basketball career. Played in 3 state championship games. We won 2 state championship titles. By the time I graduated, had the opportunity to break the all-time scoring record. Also broke the all-time assist record in Minnesota. So just was really fortunate to play for a couple great coaches and to play with some really good teammates. And for a small town in Minnesota, we produced, quite a few NAI, D3, D2, and even a Division I players. So we had a really good, 5-year stint when I was in high school. And then even before, my playing time and then into my little brother's playing time, Ellsworth kind of created a little, 12-year dynasty, which for a small town, that's fantastic. After I got done playing at Ellsworth, I went to Augustana there in Sioux Falls, played Division II basketball. Had a chance to play for Coachbuilder down there, who's obviously still the head coach. Was just, again, really fortunate. Played for some great coaches, had some really good teammates, a lot of South Dakota kids who had great high school careers. And just like in high school, in college was kind of the same thing. Played in 3 NCAA tournaments at the Division II level. Broke the all-time scoring record at Augustana. Like I said, just was a part of a lot of great teams and a lot of awesome wins, and getting to play for, national championships and in the national tournament. That's all you can really ask for at the college level. And then when I finished playing up at Augustana, took a job with your hometown at Del Rapids St. Mary. Was kind of a young kid just trying to get my feet wet. Took a teaching job, a coaching job, coached boys basketball, and then also coached cross country at Del Rapids St. Mary. Did that for a year, and then had a guy, Shane Warwick, come to me, and I actually ran Warwick workouts for about 4 years there in Sioux Falls through Avera Sports. So did that, and then had an AD, Chris Casson, come to me, who had taken over at Mount Marty, and he said, "Coach, we're looking for a men's basketball coach." He said it's a program that, excuse me, has kind of been struggling. But he goes, "I think, with your resources and the connections that you have, and the kids that in South Dakota, Northwest Iowa, Southwest Minnesota," he goes, "I think we can really, create a buzz here at Mount Marty and get recruiting, going and get some kids in our program that can help us win down the line." So I was the head coach at Mount Marty College for 2 years. We did some good things, brought in a couple good recruiting classes, kind of got that program going a little bit, program that not a lot of people were talking about. And then, all of a sudden we start signing some really good local kids, brought in some junior college kids. And then after my second year at Mount Marty, my wife, who was working at Kansas State as an associate AD at K-State, she got a call from Baylor University down here in Waco, Texas. And they were looking for an athletics chief of staff. And she kind of said to me, she's like, "Well, that's 15 hours away from what you're doing at Mount Marty." So we prayed about it, we thought about it, and she just had a great opportunity that as a family we couldn't pass up. So I stepped down after year 2 at Mount Marty. Again, loved the place, would have loved to stay for 12 years. But we really felt like God was pushing us towards Waco, Texas, and Baylor University. And so when I moved down here, just took a coaching job last year as my first year down here. So a private school, Riker Catholic, it's a 4A TAP school down here in Texas. If you guys know anything about Texas high school sports, when it comes to football, basketball, really anything, track and field, Texas high school sports is big time. And so I'm very fortunate. I'm the head boys basketball coach down here at Riker. And then I also coach boys and girls cross country at the varsity level. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm working full time for a design company called D1 Design. And we do locker room projects. We do weight room projects. We do athletic offices. And now we're kind of getting to commercial as well. So staying busy down here, but my wife and I, well, now that it's quarantine, life is a little different, but before quarantine, we were at about 4 or 5 Baylor events. We were traveling with the football team, traveling with the basketball teams. It's been a blessing down here. So sports, I guess, from high school up until, quarantine started, sports have kind of engulfed my life and now my wife's life as well.
So one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is a few weeks ago, you had put out a tweet about parents and athletes so consumed about a Division I offer. I want to touch on that because you've been on both sides of recruiting. You were recruited as a high school player coming out of Ellsworth, and then as the basketball coach in an NAIA school recruiting. I want to touch on that recruiting. First, let's touch on the tweet. When you said that, you went to Division II, you had a chance to go play in Europe, it's not about where, it's about the opportunity in itself. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
I always tell kids the biggest thing is, you talk to a ton of kids and they're like, well, I want to play in the NBA. And you never want to crush a kid's dream because you want kids to work as hard as they can, to dream big, to try to achieve their goals. At the end of the day, though, I think we all have to be realistic. The chance of a kid playing college basketball is like under 3%. The chance of that 3% kid playing professionally, whether that be overseas or in the NBA, is down near 1%. And so I tell kids all the time, I'm like, number one, go somewhere where you're wanted. Don't get so fixated on Division I, Division II, Division III, NAI, junior college. I go somewhere, number one, where they're going to help you pay for your education. Because at the end of the day, 99% of us are going to be doing something professionally that doesn't involve basketball. And so I tell kids all the time, I'm like, it's awesome to be recruited. And it's awesome to want to play at the highest level. And everybody should want to play at the highest level. But at the end of the day, go somewhere where the coach wants you. It's a great fit for you and your family. Go somewhere you're going to play and have a great experience. And don't get so fixated on labels and things, that, might look good on Twitter or Instagram or social media. Go somewhere that's going to set you up not only for the next 4 years, but for the next 40 years. And then I look at my experience, I had Division I offers, Division II offers, all the way down to, NAI, GPAC offers. And for me, it was never about level. I tell kids all the time, I said, it's funny because nowadays you don't really see kids like that. But, when I was getting recruited in high school 15 years ago, it wasn't about like, oh, Cody Schilling needs to go Division I. It was my last 4 schools were Division I North Dakota State, Division II Augustana, Division II Winona State, and NAI Northwestern College. And you look at it nowadays, you're like, you would rarely ever see a kid with your Final 4 being Division I, Division II, and NAI. But for me, it was all about fit. It was all about, where can I go and play and have the best career, over 4 years. And then too, it was education. It was which coach and which program is going to set me up for success, for the next 40 years.
So there's on the recruiting side, as a player, what to look for. As a coach, because we're going to have kids here, because this is a whole new ball game this year with COVID. We're going to have juniors that normally would have been playing a summer AAU program that would have gotten some looks that aren't going to get that now. What are some things that kids, to help them stand out, to maybe get a coach to look at them, or qualities you were looking for when you were recruiting kids?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, number one, kids right now, COVID, this is a weird deal. And I even look back at my time at Mount Marty, I never really went through this, but I have a couple kids down here in Waco that are getting recruited. We have some basketball kids getting recruited right now. We have a lot of football kids getting recruited, just different multi-sport athletes. And like I told the kids, I said, number one, coaches are following you really closely on social media. I said, don't post anything on social media that you wouldn't want on the front page of a newspaper. If you don't want your parents or your grandma reading it, if it would be a disappointment, your post, your tweet, what you're writing. I tell kids all the time, I'm like, just make sure you represent yourself in a positive way on social media. And another thing right now, talking to, especially a lot of NAIA coaches, is kids posting highlight videos on social media, kids writing out, an email to a head coach or an assistant coach at any level and sending game tape or sending a highlight tape or just introducing themselves. Because like you said, not only are kids kind of handcuffed right now, but college coaches can't go out and recruit. There's no AAU tournaments. They're all sheltered in place. They're going through the same thing the kids are. So a lot of college coaches, even the Baylor coaches I talk to, they're sitting at home, they're watching film, they're breaking down, kids' highlight tape. They're talking to kids every single day, whether that be through text messages or phone calls. So I'm telling my guys the same thing that, I would tell anybody is just make sure that you represent yourself well on social media. Make sure you go out and kind of market yourself a little bit as far as posting, a highlight tape or a film tape, or making sure that you're emailing or staying up to date with text messages and phone calls with college coaches, because right now the world of technology is how you're going to help yourself get recruited if you're not a big time athlete.
When we look at that, you can, you put the highlight tapes together, and coaches are going to get multiple highlight tapes of kids jacking threes or dunks
Yep.
or things like that. What are some intangibles that kids can really promote themselves with to coaches? That doesn't, you don't want to say, well, I'm a great teammate, because every kid's going to say that. What are some intangibles that you really looked for in your 2 years at Mount Marty?
Well, number one, if you want to get recruited, say at the D3 or NAI level, which a lot of Sacred Hoops kids are kind of right now getting recruited by those Division III and NAI schools, just because that's kind of what we had in our area back in South Dakota. Right now, focusing on your grades is important, because a lot of those schools can't give a full ride athletic scholarship. So when I'd get an email from a kid, some of the first things I'm looking at their GPA, I'm looking at their ACT, SAT score, and then, number two, are they giving me, do I have all their contact information? Do I have all their coaches' contact information? And then intangibles, when I call the coach, I'm going, okay, does he play defense? Can he help us on the glass? Because you want to win a lot of games. Number one, you got to be great defensively to get on a college court. And number two, you got to help a team rebound. Teams at the college level that get out rebounded don't win a lot of games. And so if you're a kid if you can help rebound on both sides of the floor, if you can defend, and then just little stuff like, how do they play off the ball? A lot of these kids, especially Sacred Hoops or any of these other AAU programs in South Dakota or in the Midwest, a lot of these kids that play AAU, they're the best kids on their high school team, or they're a top 2-3 kid on their high school team. So 90% of the game, the ball is in their hands. Well, when you get to the college level, the ball, you're playing with 5 other really, really good players. And so how do you play without the ball? What kind of screener, what kind of cutter, what kind of passer are you? What kind of basketball IQ do you have to not only help yourself, but also help your teammates get better? And it's funny, you and I were kind of talking about the Jordan thing before we started. And I love the quote that the Bulls front office and their coaching staff made. Michael Jordan was averaging 37, 38 points a game, but it was only getting him so far. And Phil Jackson went to Michael and said, hey, you can keep averaging 38 points a game, or you can take a lesser role offensively and start sharing the basketball, work within the offense, and make your teammates better and harder to guard. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to double team you every time down the floor if you're making your teammates better. And then all of a sudden he's hitting guys like Steve Kerr and John Paxton, and all of a sudden then, the Bulls win basically with MJ 6 championships in a row. And, when you're recruiting kids, you want those players that do all those little things right, because at the end of the day, at the college level, it's not about me, it's about we. And so you're looking for kids that are not only going to help your program, but they're going to bolster your program from a team aspect of, they're going to guard, they're going to rebound, they're going to share the rock, they can handle it, they can shoot it, they're going to be a great teammate. Maybe it's not their night, or maybe they're not playing a ton their freshman and sophomore year. What kind of a teammate are they going to be on the bench? And, then when they get their opportunity, are they going to make the most of it? And two, you and I have talked about this before, and I talked to a lot of parents about this before, but when I was recruiting a kid, and I talked to my parents about this, is I'm not only recruiting a kid, I'm recruiting a family.
Yeah.
Does that family fit into our program? Every coach in the country is talking about culture, and we need kids to fit into our program, but really you need families to fit into the program, because at the end of the day, the game is 40 minutes. And when that final buzzer goes off, you talk to your kids, but your kids have a car ride home with their parents. They got to go home with their parents 3 days till the next game. And what kind of a message is your son getting from you? Is it positive? Is it supporting the team? Because I think that's big in recruitment too. So, like I said, I tell parents all the time, not only is your kid being watched at high school games and AAU games, but if you don't think college coaches are watching how dad's acting in the crowd or mom's acting in the crowd, you're crazy, because it's a family thing. It's a 4-year investment for a college coach. And so kids are getting recruited, but parents and families are getting recruited as well.
Yeah, that's really, really great advice. You bring up family, and I know how important your brothers are to you. And you talk the team, one of the things that I really look at is when you talk about bringing a bunch of players together, I look at Casey's group that won the national title. I mean, you had guys that were stars at their own level and were able to come back. And that's a testament to your former coach. What did you learn from Billiter?
Oh, I mean, everything I try to take into coaching, you learn from the guys that, you played under, or that you've watched or studied. And Coach Billiter is, I would say, one of the guys that I learned the most from, just how he handles situations. The highs were never too high. The lows were never too low. What I always loved about Coach Billiter is he held everybody accountable. There were years where I was probably Augustana's best player, but he treated our worst player and the best player the exact same. He held you to the same team rules, the same team standards, and he got after it. And he got after me, and he said, I remember the first time he yelled at me my freshman year. And, getting coached in high school and getting coached in college is way different. The intensity level, what you're going through on a day-to-day basis, the time, the commitment, and then just the pressures at the college level are different too, because, your coaches, they're making a living. Their paychecks, are basically on kids graduating and you winning a lot of basketball games. And I remember the first time my freshman year, we were probably about 2 weeks into practice, and coach blew the whistle. And I think he got after me for about 5 minutes. And, it kind of, I went home that day after practice and I was mad. I was a little salty. I thought, I was like, why is coach coming after me? He recruited me and he told me I was the best thing since sliced bread. And then the longer I was with him, the more I was like, all he wants me to do is reach my maximum potential. He was the first guy when I graduated to shoot me a text and call me on the phone. And he was, at the graduation party, and him and his wife are now basically family to, after I played there and Casey played there. And you realize, all 4 years, he was tough on you, but at the same time, all he was doing is loving you. And all he wanted to do was see you become the best player and the best person. And he was going to hold you accountable for 4 years. So I learned a lot of off the court things from Coach Billiter, just as much as on the court.
Last thing I want to end with is, I've known you now. We just talked about this a little bit ago. It's been 7 years since we met. My son had the privilege of having you for one class as a fifth grader when you were at St. Mary's. But in those 7 years, it's no matter where you've been, whether you were at Augie, whether you were at St. Mary's, whether you were at Avera, whether you were at Mount Marty, even watching you coach, the enthusiasm and the energy that you have, and it's all the time, Cody. I mean, I don't think this may be the calmest I've ever seen you. Where did that come from? Did that come from a young age? How do you channel that type of thing?
I think, to be honest, growing up with two brothers in the driveway, and, my dad had a key to the school at Ellsworth, just to be honest, I fell in love with the game of basketball, and, fell in love with it at an early age. Watching the Jordan documentary, everybody's like, Cody, when they won their last title, you were like 10 years old. And I go, my brothers and I remember sitting around the TV, in kindergarten, first grade, watching the Bulls and, watching the Sacramento Kings and the LA Lakers, and watching kind of the end of the Celtics before they had to rebuild. And I go, yeah, I was 10, but I've been a basketball junkie my whole life. And, I just, doing a few podcasts the last few weeks and, talking to a few different people, yourself included, I've been asked that question, why do you love this game so much? And I said, I love the game because the game was good to me. And the reason the game was good to me is because I put so much time and effort, and I put my heart and I put, both feet into it. That's my biggest thing. I tell kids and families all the time, if you're going to jump in with a pinky toe, it's always going to be about you, and it's never going to be about the game. And when things are going great, you're going to love it. And when things are going bad, it's going to be, it is what it is. But, I've always tried to give as much as I can to the game. And now that I'm coaching, I remember, all the high school coaches, the college coaches that I played for. And, I feel like they brought it every single day, the energy, the passion. And I just always say to myself, don't ever short a kid. Don't ever short a player. When I go to practice, I try to give it my all every single day. I try to hold, kids accountable. I try to make them the best basketball players I can be. But, at the end of the day, you try to love them as hard as you coach them. And I think that's where the passion, and that's where, coaching, it's a relationship business. And that's why I love Del Rapids St. Mary's so much. Is I was on the phone with Craig Libas the other day talking about Connor Libas's recruitment. And I'm going, I have not coached. I have not had Connor in the classroom. Same thing as your son, Sam, now for 6 years. And it's just so fun staying in touch with so many parents and kids and coaches, on social media or text message or phone calls every now and then. And sports and basketball in general, it's a relationship business. And I feel like 99.9% of the coaches, get that, and they love on their kids, and they coach them hard, and they really just have a passion for the game. Because you and I both know at the end of the day, high school coaches especially, they're not getting rich coaching high school basketball. They're doing it because they love their community. They love the families that are in their school. They love the kids that are in their program. And they're doing it for the right reasons. So, my biggest thing for parents is, at the end of the day, I hope parents see that. I hope parents appreciate the high school coaches that they have in their programs. It's easy to complain. It's easy to make excuses. But at the end of the day, like I said, 99% of high school coaches, they absolutely love your son. They spend a lot of time, trying to make your son a better man and a better basketball player, and helping him graduate. And, I'm just excited. I think a lot of kids have a lot of great opportunities. I think what Alan's doing with Sacred Hoops, obviously it has continued to grow since I've kind of moved out. But, Megan Doyle is a good friend of mine. And I know Megan, coaches with Sacred Hoops, and she helps Alan do some of the workouts and different things. And, Sam Willard, and I got to know Alan a little bit, and I know some of the trainers around him. And, he's doing a fantastic job. And I love what he's doing West River. He's given a lot of kids West River opportunities that they probably didn't have, 5 to 10 years ago. And I love all the satellite camps that you guys are doing now. And he's going West River and doing free camps, and he's got AAU teams all over he's giving kids exposure. And I know your son plays for one of his teams, and just, when I see guys like Alan doing things like that, and the Sioux Falls area is very fortunate to have some really, really good trainers and really good coaches. But it gets me excited. A guy that, loves the game of basketball and is passionate about the game of basketball, to see so many kids get opportunities, and so many families get opportunities, and so many kids now get opportunities to play at the college level, even if it's JV at the college level. They're getting an opportunity to go to a 4-year school, hire their education, and get a little bit of scholarship on top of that, and to continue to play the game they love. What more could you ask for in life?
Well, I want to thank you personally for joining us here today. I want to thank you for the energy and the passion that you have brought to the sport, and your time at South Dakota. I know that it was a difficult choice for you and Erica to pack up and move that far away from home, but what I see on Twitter and what I follow with you and see what you're doing, they're very lucky down in Waco to have you. I've got to see you coach firsthand. I was broadcasting when you were at St. Mary's as an assistant. And the energy and the passion that you've brought to the game. And for us here in South Dakota that have gotten to be able to get to know you and watch you play, I want to thank you very much. And I also want to thank you again for joining us here today on this Sacred Hoops podcast.
Well, thank you, Lee, so much for having me. Everybody stay safe out there. I know it's kind of crazy times that we're living in right now, but be patient, stay at home. We'll get through this, but I wish all the players and families the best. If I can help in any way, let me know. But you guys are doing great things down there. And like I said, if I can ever help, please reach out and let me know.
We will. That is Cody Schilling. My name is Lee Palmer for Sacred Hoops. We want to thank you for joining us, and we will see you on our next podcast.